Welcome to the podcast from Headhunters Northwest. Headhunters Northwest. Specialized recruiting, specialized approach, where we take you behind the scenes into our customers' businesses. For over 20 years, Headhunters Northwest has served the global defense, small arms, and shooting sectors worldwide. Listen in as we discuss the inner workings of our USA and international customers. Headhunters Northwest, finding you the best heads for business.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for signing in for another podcast with Headhunters Northwest. I have been really rethinking my podcast, and I have in the past had special guests on that I know are uniquely qualified in our industry that may be in between jobs. But I had the real, true pleasure of being connected with Ela. And I asked Ela if she would be on my podcast. And this is not going to be a podcast you want to miss. This is probably one of the few podcasts I thought maybe we should make it an hour, because Ela is single-handedly one of the most interesting people I've ever met. Ela, as it's pronounced, Tingelstad, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Welcome, Ela. I want to take a few minutes and tell people about you, Ela. And then I'm going to hope you're going to sit and talk to us because, again, so Ela to me is the poster child for, she's our buyer. She's the person that you should want on your team. She's a product manager and a marketing professional. And Ela is the real deal. So just to give our audience a background real quick, and there's so much about Ela that is just, I have her resume here because I didn't want to miss anything. Ela, you're from Krakow, Poland. Is that right? Okay. And she has a degree in business administration. And she also has lots of other education, photography. She's an NRA instructor. She has done a ton of work with gun owners. She's an NRA instructor. She's lots of things, and we'll cover that. But I want people to know that Ela has come here to the United States, become a United States citizen the way that is required by our government. And she has worked her way up into our industry because she learned about her Second Amendment gun rights. And I'm probably not going to be able to cover as much as, if you've never met Ela, you need to get her contact information and you need to connect with her on LinkedIn. We're going to have the link connected to this podcast. And if you need to reach Ela because you're smart enough to know you want to hire her, then you can reach out to me and I'll put you in touch with her. But Ela is most recently a product manager that was part of a big group of people that were ended up laid off from FN America, who's a great employer, great manufacturer. And Ela, I guess I don't even know where to start. So could you maybe walk our audience through why you decided, after becoming a U.S. citizen, that process, what made you decide to take this path? Because I thought that was a great way to start when you and I talked.
So Shaylene, first of all, thank you for having me on your podcast, and thank you for that opportunity to be a part of that program. So, as you mentioned, I grew up in a country that was under the communist regime in a former Soviet bloc. So I know quite well what it is to live in a government-owned and government-regulated economy with the censorship and with, ever-present bureaucracy. I got to really grasp the meaning of the Second Amendment when I was studying the civics to become a U.S. citizen. From my life in the regime, we had very mixed or rather negative emotions about the firearms, because that wasn't something for all adults. These were the tools of the regime enforcers. So, of course, the connotation was very, very negative. But through my research and my study of the civics and U.S. Constitution, it just dawned on me how important Second Amendment is in our system of checks and balances. It's such a cliche quote, but an unarmed man is a subject, armed man is a citizen. And it all got me to really appreciate how everything goes back to we the people.
Yes. I mean, well, and your perspective is so much, I don't know. I mean, having lived here and grown up in the United States, I've never experienced that. My background isn't that. And I'm humbled, truly humbled to meet you and to be able to get to know you, even in a small way, because I think that we, even though we're reminded constantly about the importance of this, it is very good to be reminded by someone who has firsthand knowledge, the difference between a subject and a citizen. And talk a little bit about how you decided to, because your background, you were doing project management and you've done customer service and lots of other things, but how did you decide to go to work for a firearms company or a related product like that company?
That was truly a journey. Coming to US, I learned what it means to have a courage to dream. And really, I learned to dream because, under the communism, you really didn't feel like you have any options or any say how your life is going to be. That was all dependent on the generosity of the system and the government, or, that was dependent on your loyalty to the system. And here in US, it wasn't right away. It was a process. I learned to be a dreamer. I learned to, decide this is what evolved to be my passion, and that would be fantastic to also turn it into career, or in other words, work in the industry where my passion was. Obviously, it wasn't passion from the start. It was a journey and the evolution. When I first appreciated the meaning of the Second Amendment, I also decided to, gain some practical skills and knowledge. So I started to seek, at first very basic one-on-one shooting classes. So pistol one-on-one, rifle one-on-one. But I didn't stop just there. I continued training defensive skills, long-range shooting, even trap shooting. I got into hunting. I was fortunate to live at the time in a state of Minnesota, which has really very nice public hunting lands and a lot of different game that you can go after. So I became a hunter as well. So my interests and my involvement in a community was growing. From student, I quickly became a volunteer and an instructor in a local gun club. Starting from something basic like supporting gun range maintenance and facilities maintenance, helping with the firearm safety and hunter education classes, helping as a range safety officer. And then soon enough, I actually established a defensive pistol and carbine league at the gun range. Wow. It was something I thought was lacking in the area. A lot of people would meet to shoot trap or shoot competition. That was more of the fast and fun. I thought we were lacking places to practice more of the defensive shooting, where your course of fire is not choreographed, but it's more of the problem that you have to figure out how you can solve with the skills that you have at the time, or the physical ability that you have at a time. So that was one thing. I also got interested in historical collectible firearms.
Interesting. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, with a few friends at the range who were collectors as well, we started historical show and tell gatherings. We would bring whatever we had in our collection. We would come up with a theme. So let's say World War II guns, or German guns, or Russian guns, or early American service firearms. We would bring what we had. We shared the stories. We would showcase the guns. And normally we had some of that odd ammo, calibers that you probably don't hear much about or don't realize that they exist. And, whoever was at the range got to fire an old Krag rifle.
That is really neat.
Or an old Eddystone, or, the whole family of Mausers, going from Spanish Mauser to, the most popular K98s, you name it. And eventually, I also got to serve a term on the board of directors at the gun club. So I was involved in the community quite a bit. Also, I supported the Second Amendment efforts in the state. And whenever the local gun owners had a lobby days at the state capitol, I eagerly traveled. And here is where my naturalized citizen background came very handy, because on the blue side of the aisle, the lawmakers were quite more receptive to talk to a new citizen and a woman, and ta-da-da-da, surprise, she's pro-gun.
That's really special. I mean, you've really contributed to our United States. You've taken your citizenship quite seriously.
It is very precious for me. I have a very deep appreciation and the gratitude that I was given that opportunity to pledge my allegiance to red, white, and blue. And I don't take it for granted.
Yes, I see that. Now, as you've gone through this journey, how did this journey drive you to be this amazing product and marketing professional? Because now I mean, to me, what you're describing, you're really building a history of knowledge that would benefit in any product and marketing role, because I'm not sure how people could do that role without having the exposure to all these firearms and all the different parts of our industry. There's lots of niches like hunting and shooting, and there's a lot of different niches. How has that helped you in your professional life?
So as far as getting to the point where I had a career in firearms industry, that happened in parallel. Obviously, like you pointed out, being involved in variety of shooting sports and adjacent environments like outdoors and hunting, that gave me that foundation, to use the professional jargon, to understand the really very wide spectrum of customer personas, their pain points, their motivation, and really what was prompting them to favor one brand over another. So that helped me to connect with the customer needs and with the customer demographics, how varied it was. And in the parallel, I was building my professional career, because when I first moved to the United States, I had to start from the very bottom. My experience, my education was from far away. So everybody looked, maybe not everybody, I don't want to sound like a whiner, but
it's hard to translate that. It's hard for people to get that translation. The same thing happens with our military veterans. They come out and they have all this experience, but it's the civilian market, sometimes the commercial market has a really hard time translating that.
Yeah. Without that first good, solid American workforce experience, it was just harder for me to convince a potential employer that I was a good person for the job. When I ventured out to get an advice from a local workforce center, very well-meaning people there told me just start from the very bottom, from the very entry-level jobs, because your education and experience is from far, far, far away. But what can you expect? These were people from the government and were there to help, right?
Right. Excellent point. Yes. But here you are, and you have, you're not a person who needs to be humbled. You're willing to get in there and work hard and prove yourself. I mean, I see your resume and I'm in awe, because you've shown that progression and the steps from when you became a citizen and came to the United States not in that order, came to the United States, became a citizen. The steps in your experience, in your resume, were not half a step here, half a step there. They're 5 steps, 5 big steps. And you've earned your way from what, and I see thousands of resumes and talk to thousands of people. And I wanted to do this because it's just it's so unique. And it's not that other people don't work hard, but you've driven your passion and your career like this, and it's now, all into one. And I just think as a product manager, you probably have a really great perspective on what will work and what will not, what will sell and what will not. One of the things we just barely touched on when we were off camera was a point you made that I thought was brilliant. I live in Cody, Wyoming, and the demographic around me looks like me. They're like me. It's different. The demographic in Minneapolis or Minnesota is much more diverse and a lot of different types of cultures and people. And I think as a product manager, that is gold. That's really important experience to have.
So I feel a little bit like going back to the question you asked a moment ago, which was how did how did I end up in the firearms? I started telling you that it happened in parallel. My professional career breakthrough at first happened not in the firearms industry. It actually happened in hardware and kitchen component.
That's great.
Area where I worked for a local family-owned hardware distributor. Again, that was my American dream. From more of an entry level as a purchasing assistant, I got promoted to a product manager, which was actually very comprehensive role because it encompassed everything from forecasting and purchasing through marketing, developing e-commerce channels and marketplaces, advertising co-ops, customer loyalty programs. And in that setting, I happened to be especially successful in scaling up e-commerce and bringing what you could call transformative growth in some marketplaces, such as Amazon. Once I had these accomplishments behind my belt, that opened the door for me to join Revo Brands group. I primarily work for Real Avid, so a really very great brand in the industry, specializing in gun cleaning, gun maintenance, and gunsmithing tools. So for me, that was heaven.
Yeah, that's really special.
Yeah.
Great brand. Lots of exposure for you. And I'm sure you helped them tremendously.
Yes, I had a really great time working there. I joined the team in a capacity of the marketing business analyst, but I dedicated a lot of time and effort bringing growth to Amazon channel, creating content, basically directing the creation of the marketing content and search engine optimized content for e-commerce, and pretty much doing the same thing again, bringing that multiplying growth to Amazon sales and other marketplaces as well.
That's fantastic. Tell us about your role when you were at FN. Tell us about the type of things you did and how your experience, with being exposed to the firearms industry privately and all of the things you learned. How did that affect your job at FN? And tell us a little bit about what does a product manager do at FN? Tell us what that is. A lot of people might not know what that job is.
Yes, that's a good question. Even my husband sometimes asks me, "What do you really do? What is the job?"
I work all day.
What is this job all about? As you mentioned, at FN America, I was back in the product manager role. However, this time it was quite different than for the hardware distribution company. My focus was on pistols and also on trailblazing special makes and custom limited editions programs in the company. That had to happen step by step, or rather in a crawl walk run manner because I need to develop a lot of internal processes, processes with suppliers, and basically craft some sort of the foundation and the vision and, basically set up the foundation, why we want to make special makes and customs and what we want to achieve by having those limited editions. Because it's not just about, let's paint a gun a different color and see how it sells. I wanted to make sure that it's aligned and that it supports company vision, the brand promise, and that it basically helps convey the story and the value and identity of the brand. So that was my focus of the work there.
And how do you think that your experience over the last couple of years, how has that helped you become how does it help you contribute to be a valuable product and marketing professional? What are the things that you've experienced that you think have been helpful and added to that job?
Well, so first of all, I don't think you can truly do this job without the passion for the product. You need to have interest to, be hands-on with the technical aspects of it. You need to have that heart and the capacity to be involved with the customers, to have the empathy with the customers and their problems and not be dismissive. We talked about it a little bit off the camera, how the industry is changing, how it's learning to address different needs of the shooters. So we have different demographics, different experiences. We have exponentially growing segment of women shooters, new shooters, or even if we think about those gun owners who have had guns for generations, our society is becoming older and older. We're aging.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Maybe we have a good history, and maybe 20 years ago, the shooter was capable of handling 45 or 50 cal or, Magnum calibers without any problems. But 20 years later, with the arthritis, maybe even a 9mm is becoming challenging. So you can't be...
Yeah, making a slide like butter is a big deal in my world. My hand strength isn't as strong as my husband's, for example. And, when my daughter went to go purchase a concealed carry, she was going to purchase X brand. And I said, well, I don't think that's going to work because the slide is very hard to pull. And if you can't do that, it's no good to you or anybody else. And it's just dangerous. So let's go test them. So we went to, luckily, a great dealer and were able to try different firearms. And it's a different need than it used to be. We're a different buyer. And she ended up buying a gun that, was comfortable for her. But as we get older and our population ages, our choices are different. And I would think a product manager is a very important part of deciding what the company is going to build and what they're going to sell. And I would think that your diverse exposure to these different cultures and different people, as you described to me in some of the women's groups and some of the other groups that you've been in, I think is very valuable. And women are not the only buyers, but they certainly are. I think we're making a lot of headway in thinking about products that women want to buy. And they certainly, in my world, do not need to be pink. They need to be firearms that work. But at least our manufacturers, right? You gave me an example. Our marketing is getting better, right? Don't you see some of the products being marketed in a better way?
Marketed, and I would also say, developed with that different mindset. We were talking about it earlier, just you and me. A few years ago, you had that dogma in the self-defense training that 9mm is the one and only caliber.
Yeah.
And, if you can't manage the recoil, if you can't manage the gun, too bad, go to the gym. That was the solution to the, recoil management problem.
Right.
Well, few years down the road, we had manufacturers that had courage to come up with really tune in to those pain points of the weaker shooters. We had a very, very successful product on the market, Easy Shield. You can criticize the gun. You don't have to like the gun, but you definitely need to have appreciation for how the requirements developed and how right on point a lot of features in this gun was. Easy to rack, easy to shoot. So, a caliber that is more manageable for weaker shooters, for maybe elderly shooters, all the little gizmos that allow it to load it easier. That's the answer to the problem. That's not dismissing the problem.
Yeah.
And also, from my experience with the inner workings of a lot of big companies, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of guts to push and pursue and launch this type of product.
Well, it's a big investment. And what if it doesn't work out, And I do think you're right. We really have made massive headway. And I think people, me included, tend to focus unfairly so that we're not making headway. And if you really look back, we really are making massive headway in technology and improvements. You take ammunition, for example. Yesterday, I ordered some 45 ammunition from Liberty Ammunition because I carry a 45 when I'm out. And that makes, not only is it great ammunition, but it's a fraction of the weight of the other ammunition that I used to carry. So my 45, it might weigh more than my 9, but when I put, Liberty ammunition in it, it weighs even less. And, can I carry a heavier gun? Sure. But am I really going to do that if I'm just going to take a walk with my dogs? I just think all of this combined, we really are making great headway. But it takes, in my opinion, people like you to be able to say, we could do this. It takes really brilliant product marketing people to be able to say, hey, have we thought about this? Here's a demographic that would really respond well if we designed a pistol like this. And I think it's really brave companies that are innovative that drive our industry. And I'm ever so grateful that we were connected. And I just think that you are the future of our industry. I would love to say it's me, but I can't design anything. I could be a buyer, though. So thank you, Ela, for being on this podcast. And I want to remind our listeners that, I would connect with Ela if you could under any circumstances, because she's a fine example of what the future of our industry is. And I look forward to many years of being connected and seeing the products that you share with our industry and the products that you're able to market, and the future is bright. So thank you. Thank you, Ela, for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you again, Shaylene, for having me. That was my honor, my pleasure as well.
All right. Well, this is another episode of Headhunters Northwest podcast. And thank you so much for listening and being a part of our world. And I look forward to the next podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Headhunters Northwest podcast. Specialized recruiting, specialized approach. You can reach out at headhuntersnw.com or call 605-600-1709. Join us again next week as we look behind the curtain into the global defense, small arms, and shooting sectors. Headhunters Northwest, finding you the best heads for business.